You know, Anthony was talking earlier, it's so interesting to me that if Jesus had just, I think no one was going to get really upset that he died. No one was going to get upset that he actually healed some folks for the most part.
Yes,
no one was going to get really upset if he was raised from the dead, I think, or whatever. But the thing that really was the problem was his teachings.
Absolutely.
If he had just kept his mouth shut, he might have lived to be a very old age.
That's right.
They killed him because of his words.
Oh, yes.
They didn't kill him because he did nice, good things.
No.
They killed him because of the things that he said.
I like that. You don't put nice guys on the cross normally.
That's right. No.
I mean, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Why bother?
Yeah.
You know, all the expensive.
Let him go his way. Yeah, that's right.
But when he said that their father was the devil,
yes,
which he did.
Yes, he did.
That was offensive.
Wow.
And of course, death was not something they expected the Messiah to do. That sounded wrong. Although if they'd read Isaiah 53,
then
they could have seen it.
There you are. That's
but they
right.
didn't.
Yeah.
But the main cause of offense was the fact that the kingdom of God was not established. If you're going to be the Messiah, you're going to rule the world. And he didn't at that stage. So that was very hard on their credit, on his credibility.
Yeah. And then you have Jews that are still stumbling on that today.
Of course.
And unfortunately, it's
yes.
Chapter 10, verse 1. For I want you to know, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea. And all were baptized in Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ.
Yes.
Verse 5, nevertheless, with most of them God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness.
Yes.
Wow, he's laying out some very powerful truths that, again, it would be difficult for anyone to disagree with the things he said before.
Yes. The rock, of course, is a type, and Paul has the word typikos in Greek right here.
Yes.
He's talking about being baptized in a cloud. That's not literal baptism.
Yes.
And the rock is not a literal walking rock. So people plead here the letter of the text to say that the literal Jesus was a rock.
Yes.
And that had to be pointed out to me way back.
Yes.
I was very blind in this area. So I added my translation to help people along. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from a spiritual typical rock that accompanied them. That rock was a foreshadowing of the Messiah. And people will say, well, you're translating what isn't in the Greek. I'm helping people to understand what the Greek actually says.
Yeah,
that's the object of translation.
That's right. Yeah.
In view of what they may have been mistaught, we're helping them along to what seems to be the correct meaning.
I know that in my background, there's just a lot of hang up about this, actually what turns out to be a very simple, easy thing.
Yes.
But we'll say, oh, well, Jesus was actually literally back there then, following them around, and
really.
But that's not what he's saying at all. He's talking about this spiritual rock.
Yes.
That rock was a typical, if you will.
Absolutely, he uses those words.
Christ. Yes,
typical. Obviously, they weren't literally baptized in a cloud.
Right.
It's a foreshadowing. So it's very powerful to me, that passage now, but I certainly was guilty of falling all over on this text, in the days when one believed in the Son of God being older than his ancestor David, which now seems to me very incoherent.
So makes no sense at all.
Makes no sense.
That's right.
And then I think you began to read there in verse 5, we get to the severe part of it, right? God wasn't pleased with most of them.
Wow.
Threatening again.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting that they all, I guess the point is all of them were participants in those things.
Yes.
Which were types and shadows of what we now have.
Yes.
But they all participated in them, but not all of them pleased God, and not all of them made it. So what is that lesson by extension to the Christian?
Not once saved, always saved.
Not once saved, always saved. Yeah, that's right.
Amongst other things.
Yeah.
It's a much tougher proposition, this Bible.
Yes.
That's perhaps why people don't read it too intensely. They might find stuff there that's hard to take.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah. And then you have there exactly our point in verse 6, I think.
Yes. Now these things took place as examples for us, that we might not desire evil as they did. Verse 7, do not be idolaters as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. So they were into idol worship. And,
pagan worship.
Yeah. So their rising up to play was before the idols and relating to them.
Yes.
Verse 8, we must not indulge in sexual immorality as some of them did. And 23,000 fell in a single day.
Wow.
Verse 9, we must not put Christ to the test as some of them did and were destroyed by serpents. Verse 10, nor grumble as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer.
Exactly right. We shouldn't put Messiah to the test, as some of them tempted God. You see, read Messiah back there.
That's right.
The parallel is quite clear. They tempted God, and in parallel, then we must not tempt the Messiah. That's not really very difficult.
Yeah.
And they were killed by snakes. Isn't that amazing? Killed by snakes as a direct punishment. Judgment fell. It doesn't always fall these days, and so people get away with murder. Sometimes it can fall and does fall. But here it did, definitely.
Verse 10, so we shouldn't do that. And they were destroyed. Verse 10, nor grumble as some of them did and were destroyed by the destroyer.
Yes.
Verse 11, now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages has come.
Yes.
Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. 13, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it.
That's very comforting.
Very comforting, yes.
The tests there will be, but they're not beyond your capacity to resist. Yeah.
And,
good sermonizing, right to the point.
Yes.
No wasted words at all.
And yet he's pointing out with clarity the seriousness of all these matters. The folks back there who were foreshadows, if you will, foreshadowing what we now have in a spiritual reality.
Yes.
But they fell. They fell in the wilderness.
Some of them at least, right?
Yes, some of them
succeeded,
did.
but even the minority only succeeded. Yes.
So we should take that as an example and as a lesson for us.
Yes.
And again, he touches on sexual immorality. 23,000 fell in one day, he said.
Wow.
We shouldn't put our master or the Christ to the test. Some of them tested God back then, and so we shouldn't grumble as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. So it's tremendous, very serious business.
Absolutely.
So it's not just that the Corinthian folks are making some sort of technical blunders and mistakes.
No.
He's warning them in very significant ways.
Absolutely.
You could not finish the race. It's not just that he's just saying it would be better if you did this or that, but he's really going beyond that. He's saying it's important that you not be divided among yourselves. It's important that you be not at law with one another, or that you not have sexually immoral people accompanying the brother.
Exactly, because you're not going to be saved if you fail to repent of all that.
You're going to miss it. That's exactly right.
It's not, as you said, it's not a preference. It might be better if you didn't sin. No, it's a disaster if you continue in sin.
Yes,
It's the end of your salvation, in fact.
It's interesting then in that 9th chapter, he compares this to a race, but not everybody wins, he says, so you should be aware of that. And then he says, my goodness, you could be disqualified.
Yep.
And he puts that on himself.
Disqualified.
He said, even I, all I've done, he said, I still could be disqualified.
Wow.
Not receive the crown. What is the crown? It's a crown of life.
Absolutely.
And, so, wow. And now in this 10th chapter, he's giving us examples, again, drawn from the circumstances of the Old Testament, the law, and how that while they had the same privileges, same blessings, many of them did not make it.
Be a reason for reading the Old Testament intently, wouldn't it?
Wow. One good thing about what he was saying there at the end there in verse 13 of what we were just reading, he's saying, don't despair because you may think this is impossible to please God. But actually you can. And though you may encounter great hardships, great difficulties, he says, don't be mistaken.
That's right.
God will not allow you to be overwhelmed with more than what
the bar is high, but not impossibly high.
That's right.
Is that right? The bar is very high, but not impossibly high.
I love it.
Yes.
So God will get you through this. Put it that way. Verse 14, therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to sensible people. Judge for yourselves what I say. Verse 16, the cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a participation in the blood of Christ?
Yes.
The bread that we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ? Verse 17, because there is one bread, we who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one bread. Verse 18, consider the people of Israel. Are not those who eat the sacrifices participants at the altar? 19, what do I imply then? That food offered to idols is anything? Or that an idol is anything? No, verse 20, I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they offer to demons and not to God. We were discussing that earlier.
Yes.
I do not want you to be participants with demons. Wow. Verse 21, you cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the table of the Lord and the table of demons.
Wow.
Verse 22, shall we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than him? Wow. Are we in the dominant position? I don't think so. Wow. So again, tremendous exhortations, and very severely too. So once again, we're not going to participate in idol worship. You can't mix those things. You can't mix setting at the table of idols and that business with partaking of the table of the Lord.
That's right. Because you're part of the altar in the Old Testament.
Yes.
If you eat the sacrifices, you're part of that altar. So if you eat in a temple that's idolatry, you're taking part of the demon activity, which is very serious.
Verse 23, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful.
Yes.
All things are lawful, but not all things build up. 24, let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. Might touch back again about that food doesn't commend you to God or not.
Yes.
Either way, it's not the food, and the idols are nothing. But yet, even though it would be lawful to eat these things, Paul is saying, let's take great care, especially in view of your weaker brother who may not, who may be taken in by this. Or your eating of these things sacrificed to idols might encourage him to do that, and his conscience will be defiled.
That's true. That can be carried too far. People say, well, you shouldn't ever have any wine because somebody might stumble. Jesus didn't decide to do it that way, and God did not either. But there's a place to abstain from wine if you've got a particularly sensitive brother, so you cannot handle it. But there's not the place, though, to forbid things that God otherwise says are permissible. We don't want to be more righteous than Jesus. who turned 120 gallons of water into alcohol.
That's right.
I remind my Baptist friends. Well, they put me into eternal hellfire for half a glass of wine in strict moderation.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So he's saying again, let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. 25, eat whatever is sold in the market, the meat market, without raising any questions on the ground of conscience.
Yes.
That, I think, probably goes back to this issue we were talking about earlier. Many times, food that may have been sacrificed to an idol, they have excess food, or there's foods that they're doing that, it's sacrificed. They bring it down into the marketplace and sell it. And I think what Paul is saying, it doesn't mean anything because it was sacrificed. It doesn't, we know it, but he says, don't worry about it. Just if you see something good, buy it, eat it, take it home. Don't even worry about it.
That's right.
But then he does have this caveat.
Yes.
He says, for the earth is the Lord's.
Yes.
He said, ask no questions on the ground of
all
conscience.
belongs to God.
For everything is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Verse 27, if one of the unbelievers invites you to dinner, however, and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any questions on the ground of conscience. So once again, maybe you have a neighbor. He's not a believer. And he's setting food before you, and you don't know, maybe this food originally had been offered to an idol or initially, and now he's bought some or brought some from the temple, whatever. And Paul's saying, don't worry about it, just eat it. On the other hand, eat what's said before you without raising any questions on the ground of conscience. But if anyone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it for the sake of the one who informed you, and for the sake of conscience.
Very detailed.
Well,
not a problem that faces us precisely today. Happily, we don't have to worry about that so much.
There may be areas where people would encounter that.
That's right.
Problem.
Other things, perhaps the issue of alcohol and so on, might apply here well, but not this particular thing. But I see the common sense approach.
Absolutely. So he says, be careful then, don't eat that. You'd have to, and that's kind of bad. Here someone's prepared a meal for you, and then they're saying to you, you're not going to even get into it, you're not going to ask questions for conscience, but then they're saying to you, oh, this was sacrificed to such and such an idol, isn't that wonderful? At that point, you have to do the unhappy thing, Paul says, of saying, oh, we appreciate your care and what you've done, but I think it would be better not to eat this because we don't serve that.
I'm rather glad we're not troubled by that particular detail ourselves. It's rather laborious, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go.
But very reasonable in that context, actually. I understand that.
So he says, don't eat it then for the benefit, for the sake of the one who informed you, and for the sake of conscience. And then notice he says in verse 29, I don't mean your conscience. That's okay.
Of course.
You'd be all right. But his,
the weak one,
for the conscience of that other person.
Yep.
For why should my liberty be determined by someone else's conscience? Oh my goodness. For I partake with thankfulness. Why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks? So it is giving up something that, the strong believer knows that there's no problem with eating that food, whether it was sacrificed to some idol supposedly or not, but he is refraining for the sake of another person's conscience. And that's love and wisdom, I think.
And for the sake of not being criticized.
Yes.
Unless wrongly criticized, but nevertheless avoid being criticized for any reason if you can.
Exactly.
No, I can see how that works. It's reasonable, actually.
And maybe there would be similar circumstances. I can see maybe there's a situation in which you have a brother who is weak and thinks that it's wrong to eat pork.
Of course.
And his weaker conscience, he would be. So if if that person was coming to my house, I probably wouldn't serve him pork. I wouldn't put him in that position.
Or a vegetarian. You're not going to serve him meat if you know he's a vegetarian. This is just good common sense, civil common sense.
That's exactly
right. Yeah.
And the same could probably be true for wine.
Absolutely.
As you mentioned earlier about
That's
that.
right. That's right.
I think Jesus himself drank wine. He turned water into wine, and others drank it.
That's right.
And yet we have folks today who, because of the weakness of their conscience, they think it would be wrong for them to drink wine, and that's unfortunate.
It isn't.
So, but if you're going to have that friend over, maybe if they have a problem with that, then for their conscience sake, you would bear with that. And
the difficulty can arise when you move into a different culture and go to Europe and say, when you're offered a glass of wine,
now
I'm a Christian, I don't touch that. But then you've lost your witness.
It goes backwards then, doesn't it?
It turns against you.
Yes, yes.
So it calls for a lot of ambassadorial diplomacy, doesn't it, all of this? Wisdom, kindness, reasonableness, not insisting on your rights.
That's right.
Why not rather be defrauded, he said earlier in the book, remember?
Yes, yes.
Same thing.
And
tall order.
That is true, isn't it? Self-control, as he mentions, the athletes, they tremendous self-control.
They do.
And I think he's coming to that off of his, when I'm among the Jews, I will ingratiate myself among them if I can. But if I'm among those who are not, then I ingratiate. I do all these things.
If you want to go to Israel and keep the Sabbath with the person who's giving you a house to stay in, of course you do it.
Yes.
On the other, it doesn't mean you're a Sabbath keeper.
That's right. That's right.
It calls for subtlety, but actually it's all very reasonable. I mean, most intelligent people reading this would think, that's good stuff.
Absolutely. That's right. It just makes really good sense.
It makes very good sense to me, yeah.
And so he senses the problem for the person who realizes there's no... He's just told him, in fact, earlier, you're none the better off if you eat, and you're none the better off if you don't eat, as far as God is concerned.
As far as God is concerned. I think his overall message, though, is in Romans 14. He says, I, a Jew and a Christian, are free of all of these restraints. So grow up, be like me, the apostle, he's saying indirectly.
Right.
Don't remain weak. Yes, put up with the weak brother, but recognize he needs help.
Yes.
If someone is a vegetarian on principle, there's no biblical reason for that. Yeah. However, tolerate the weakness.
Yes.
But be like Paul.
Yes. Yes.
Why not be like Paul or Jesus? Get over it.
Yeah. And I admire one thing about Romans 14, and it's easy to read through that and not always think about it, but Paul is out and out calling those who think that they should not, must abstain.
That's right.
They're weak.
Of course.
And most people who are in that vein of thought, they don't think of themselves as being weak. They wouldn't enjoy you saying that at all.
No, that's right.
But Paul out and out says,
that's right.
They're weak.
Be like me. I, a Jew and a Christian. Yeah. I'm not into physical circumcision.
Yeah.
What? That is radical stuff. I see it. Of course, there are the arguments in our day, if you think the meat has been polluted by being manipulated, then for health reasons,
different
that's
kind
a
of
totally different.
Sure.
It calls for wisdom, clearly, in these areas. Yes. Okay.
Verse 31. So whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Wow.
Good summary.
32. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks, to the extent you can. There are people who will be offended no matter what you do.
So right.
I've learned that in life.
So right.
But I think his principle here is, to the extent you can do it,
absolutely,
don't give offense to anybody if you can help it.
We might paraphrase it, do your best not to cause any offense, and we would not be stepping outside the text if we did that. Although some will complain that we are.
That's right.
So you added to the words.
That's right.
So, relax.
So as a principle,
I'm tired of the nervousness of people here too. We can get frightfely overcritical.
And
you might want to celebrate a birthday or a wedding anniversary, and people will not even come in your house to do church with you because you might have broken one of their rules.
Yes,
rather than God's rules.
Oh my goodness,
it's not good.
God is so sensible. It's us human beings who have so many problems.
We love the rules and regulations. We love that.
It is interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the point in Colossians.
Yes.
Absolutely. That Colossians 2, where Paul is coming down through there and saying, don't do this thing. Taste not, all that. He said it looks on the surface of it looks like you're being wise and all that. He said in reality it's not. He says it's a different kind of vainness.
Exactly.
Wow.
Self-consciousness, selfishness, even.
Yes.
A sense of over self-importance.
Wow. So give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God. And then he says, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do.
Yes.
Wow. Not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved.
That's marvelous.
Wow.
Salvation.
Isn't
Only
that
one thing counts, right?
Yeah.
Is you get saved rather than lost.
Right. If people are not going to get into the kingdom of God, the eternal kingdom of God,
Now that's what
then everything's lost. Then the rest of this doesn't matter much.
Right. No, it's
We've
very
got to get
secondary.
there. We've got to get there.
That's the only
key.
issue. Well, that of course is plain common sense.
Yeah.
Living forever is the only ultimate point of anything, isn't it?
That's right.
Or not living forever.
That's right.
That's a disaster.
All of these things are so temporary.
Of course.
And that's what he was saying
Yes.
there in another place.
Yeah.
You know, these things are being used
Yes.
up and
course.
used up with the using
Exactly.
and going, the passing away.
Of course.
We shouldn't be building our faith and hope on things that are
Very
so
fine
temporary.
worldview, and that can be developed in us only with time and study. But you don't catch this worldview in 10 minutes.
Right,
You
right.
get it by living with Paul, I think,
Absolutely.
with Jesus,
Absolutely.
from their words.